Hello and welcome to Real Time Recorded. Today, Zeus and I will be talking about three things as usual: Microsoft Ignite and Zoom ads. So, Zeus, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Uh, you know, it's that time of year again when there's lots of analyst conferences and briefings and things like that. And
It
so,
came out. It's like all of a sudden back to back. It's crazy. Um, well, let's talk about Microsoft Ignite. Let's see. I want certainly a lot more announcements than I was expecting. But I think one of the biggest ones, possibly one of the biggest announcements of the year, is that Microsoft has announced it's a CCaaS player on Dynamics. Let's see, what can we say about this? First off, they said they're going to continue to honor their relationships with all their partners like NICE and Vonage, etc. And they're calling this voice channel for Dynamics 365 customer service. Diaz, got any thoughts on this one?
yeah, it's interesting because it's not full-fledged contact center. It's voice only. So they do need to run the partners. I'm surprised they chose the route to go build versus buy, because I think they could have got somebody else at a relatively decent price. It's built on the same stack, that Teams is on, and let's face it, they've been working on voice and Teams for a decade now, and they still don't have it right. If they did, they wouldn't need all the voice partnerships as well, right? So their success in voice is, debatable at best, I suppose. I know they tout a lot of numbers and things like that, but I think it would have been more impactful for the industry if they had acquired. We'll see what they do with this from here.
Well, I wouldn't rule it out. I think they still might acquire. I think Microsoft often moves first and then figures out things later. So I think that could still definitely happen. I think it's also a warning shot, though. I think the announcement was a surprise at Ignite, but it's here week 44 of 2021. But I think we've all known that this was coming for quite some time. We've only got, in the CCaaS space, the only giant company in there right now is Amazon, and they've only been there for a few years, and they're already moving up to the right very quickly. But we know it's going to be, Microsoft. We know that Salesforce is probably coming. We know that Oracle's probably coming, and it's going to be a very different space when all these giants are in there.
Yeah, well, Microsoft did allude to it last year, so I don't know. I guess it was the surprise is it was this year, and who knows when it could have been. I do think, though, and we've talked about this before with Microsoft, that they've had a tendency to release products that are good enough, I suppose, and that won't fly in the contact center. So we'll have to see. Even with Teams and the migration from Skype and stuff, that was kind of kludgy. I don't know if they can take that approach with contact center. It's a very important application. Everybody that works in the contact center space knows about this. I think that's one of the reasons why, Dave, there aren't more other, big companies in this. It takes a long time to do and a long time to get right. Amazon is just starting to catch their stride now. They've been in this, 3-4 years now, right? So, it's a long road to hoe to do contact center right, and we'll see if, Microsoft certainly has the potential. I mean, their whole sales model is, tied up in licensing with other products and stuff like that. So. There's potential there, but this is a different type of application than they used to.
I think it's interesting that they're launching it through Dynamics and not through Teams. And so that really means that the only people who can use the Microsoft Contact Center today are Dynamics customers, where I thought Teams would have been a little more universal, and it's kind of more of what we're used to in our industry. Now, right now there's a good narrative about UC and CC going together. I suppose Microsoft will get there. As you say, they kind of start with a very narrow offering. They don't have video. It's only Dynamics, et cetera. But it'll probably broaden. But it's an interesting conversation about the CRM and UC thing. You got Microsoft now and Zendesk kind of leading with CRM and contact center. I think a lot of companies are neutral. I think that a lot of companies now are marketing the UC angle. This will definitely put a shadow over Genesys. Genesys is supposedly in talks about having an IPO, so put a shadow over Genesys IPO, and I think that but Microsoft is really building a very comprehensive solution. It'll take a few years, to your point, but they've got automation, they've got CRM, They've got collaboration. They've got ERP. They're pulling it all together. What they don't have right now is WFM or workflow, workforce engagement management, and I said that completely wrong. WEM, WFM, whatever you want to call it, but workforce engagement management. But I suspect they'll do what they always do, and they'll get some APIs and open this up. And before you know it, every workforce engagement management company is going to be more or less endorsing the solution like they do with a lot of other Microsoft solutions.
Yeah, the tie with Dynamics is kind of interesting because it does limit it because Salesforce is still the 800-pound gorilla, in the CRM space. So their audience is limited there. If they were to come up with their own standalone CCaaS solution, then they could have then integrated that into Salesforce and created some sort of backdoor. So
let's get to the other big announcement at Ignite. I mean, there were a lot of announcements, and like I said, a lot of Teams announcements. But the other big one was the Metaverse inside Teams, and you got to figure they were pissed at Facebook. I mean, Facebook, like just a few days before their big announcement of the Metaverse inside Teams, was Facebook changing their name and doing their little demo and all that stuff, and so Facebook kind of stole their spotlight, which has got to be really frustrating for them. And we've all been in that kind of situation before. But clearly they're on a collision course with Facebook. And because the one thing that Facebook is leading with is their Horizon Metaverse meetings, which I think is we talked about it before, not the most interesting thing. But supposedly these Metaverse meetings are coming to Teams as early as next year, where Facebook was talking a little bit further out. Well, I guess the meetings is already out. But what are your thoughts on this one, Zeus?
I understand there's some niche use cases for talking to avatars and meetings and things like that. But realistically, what's the business addressable market of that? The Cisco hologram one made some sense to me because at least I would have 3D representation. I could have 3D Dave sitting in my living room, right? So I could get all your scowls and your unhappiness here in real life. But with the avatar one is hard. Gaming maybe schools. Outside of that, I just have a hard time seeing that in a business context and stuff. So
yeah, I want to be really clear here. I actually think the metaverse is a really cool concept, but I think it's a really down the road concept, and I don't think it's about meetings. I think there's going to, it's just like a lot of disruptive technologies. They solve some particular problem really well, and then they evolve and get better from there. Like the digital camera was about journalists being able to send their photos in electronically, things like that, And so I believe the metaverse is coming. I believe it's really important, but I don't think meetings are the killer app. I think it's actually we've actually seen this already because it was back in 2017. Apple came out with the what do they call it, Animojis, and that was actually pretty clever. It wasn't just a cartoon you controlled; it was actually using the camera and matching your expressions. But I've never even been in a meeting with an Animoji before. It didn't really take off, to my knowledge. And I don't think people really want to sit there and have meetings with cartoon characters. I don't think that's something that people are asking for.
Yeah, it may be a bit of a solution looking for a problem. And the problem, often when you have cool technology, sometimes the problems come and sometimes they don't. It reminds me of when NVIDIA announced their holodeck. I asked Jensen Huang, their CEO, what's the practical use case for it? And he said, I don't know. And he goes, we build cool things. Some of the things we stick, and he goes, 90% of the stuff we throw away. And but without doing that underlying research and coming up with the ideas, it's hard to innovate. And so, we'll see where this goes. It may be, who knows, maybe part of the new way we educate people, or I don't know, something like, or used in entertainment facilities or something like that. But
so Microsoft's going to allow, as of just like 6 months from now, companies will be able to create their own metaverse rooms, meeting rooms, and upload them. And I'm sure there's going to be a couple of fun ones that we see on Twitter and stuff like that. But it's kind of an interesting shift because right now the conversation's been so much about building out meeting rooms and getting them video enabled and bringing the Microsoft into the room. Now the shift is going to be, creating a virtual building a virtual space and uploading it to Microsoft. So I'm really excited about the metaverse. I think it's like a 20-year thing we're talking about. I want to point out that almost every Hollywood version of the metaverse is really dystopian and really evil. I mean, you've got The Matrix is in a bad time. Ready Player One, it's they're escaping from their bad reality. Lawnmower Man, if you're as old as me, remember that one. Even the movie Avatar was all about destroying the environment and having to live in this metaverse. So it's not a really positive concept. I do believe it's real. I do believe it's coming, and real is probably the wrong word. And I actually believe that real estate in the metaverse could even be more expensive than it is in physical real estate. Kind of like some virtual coins are more valuable than some physical coins. But
Remember though,
we're
Avaya,
talking.
IBM did Second Life, and then Avaya had their Avaya Life, if you remember that.
Yeah, Avaya had one, and we've
Yeah.
seen a couple of these. The thing is, nobody. It's just not a natural thing to do. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, let's get to our third topic.
Yeah.
Zoom ads.
Zoom ads, and so that's
I wasn't
interesting.
expecting this one.
No, Zoom's trial, in case you missed the news, and it kind of flew under the radar, I think because it was announced at the same time as, Ignite was going on. But Zoom announced they'll be trialing ads in their free platform for, a subset of the users. And this is counter to the discussions I've had with Eric Yuan, their CEO, before, where he said he'd never bring ads to Zoom. But he also said that pre-pandemic. And I don't think when he said that, he really thought that we'd all be using Zoom all day long for everything. And so it's unrealistic, I think, to expect Zoom to continue to fund free use for, I don't know what percent of the users are using Zoom for free, but I imagine it's a pretty big chunk of it. And if you just, if you said even it's like 50 million of their 300 million, and it costs them just a couple of bucks, a month to run, I mean, that's $100 million, right? So they're putting a big cost in this. And so there's two ways around that. You can charge people, which I don't think he wants to do, or you can run ads, which I think is kind of an unintrusive way to do it. So.
It is really surprising they're doing this, and I got to figure companies like Google and Facebook are excited as can be to hear this because they are advertising companies. Zoom's not really an advertising company, but the thing is, Zoom was one of the first enterprise software companies to bring freemium to the enterprise, and the whole idea of the enterprise is you give them something free, and then they convert to the paid model, and so the Zoom experience is pretty robust. It's just limited to 40 minutes, but otherwise it's got pretty much all the features. They just announced they're doing encryption to it. So in my opinion, I think they're kind of going about it wrong. I'd rather see them limit their freemium a little more and work on that conversion rate. Because, to your point, they're not a charity. They don't have to provide free meetings for the world. That's not their business. But advertising, that plays into Google and Facebook, and it doesn't play into into Zoom. Now they have to develop an advertising business. And just to be clear, they're not going to run ads in the videos. It's at the end. When the meeting is over, it pops up. It's only for free users. And it is not based, and this is a question, it is not based on any of your content. And so they're not monitoring your meeting content, your audio, video, your files, to figure out what to serve you, which is like what some of the other companies might do. They are somehow targeting you, maybe on your demographic or where you are, or your age or something like that. I'm not sure what information they have, but it just seems like a very big business model switch for Zoom.
But I don't think it's meant for the small business that's using it for free. I think it's actually meant for the person at home. Like Sheila always posts pictures of her using Zoom to talk to her family, right? I think that's more the use case for the ads, is somebody who uses it for pure consumer use. You get 4 people doing fantasy football drafts over it, that sort of thing, right? That to me would be the market for the ads, not the business because I do think they want to convert all the business users. So, but yeah, you're right. They're not a charity. They have to decide, do they want to keep giving this to consumers to use for consumer use cases, or do they want to stick to business? And it sounds like Zoom wants to do both. So.
Well, that wraps up this episode then.